good acid, brother. There's no such thing as good negative, brother. You see what I mean? So it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's start with a pure language then, because that's what we're really talking about. See, English is a broken language. English, if you was trying to communicate something, you would basically only have half of it in the first place with English. And again, we communicate to ourselves with this language. So we built an eidolon from this star. So English is a star language. All the language is a star language, right? But it traces out a specific pattern in the sky. This is important because it's like if you trace out that specific pattern, that's the stars we're working with. And the rest of the stars we aren't. So that's the data set. When we trace out certain stars, which you call letters in the sky, and then we manifest them into these words, but you skip all of the other stars, your program that you're going to be using is just only going to be about the story of those particular constellations. And that's why we have this 7 days and this kind of stuff, because it's just about these specific 7 stars. You see what I mean? And then every single day of the week, we serve the ritual of continuously enlivening these 7 stars. And these 7 stars are also in our body. Right? That's how the chakra system is laid out. The chakra system is also corresponds to a planet. So then it's like, but at some point a mirror is shown to us and we get into this external worship rather than self-worship, if you may. And then self-worship is actually where you go in your body and you really set things straight, because you do know that, like, if you're a very passive, kind of naive person, things will run over you inside of your own body. Entities will be all up on you trying to run your life. And so that's why it takes these wake-up calls sometimes, because you realize, like, when I had to wake up was when I got put away for a little bit. And it was because, like, everything was good for a while inside of my mind and was making all this money and all these people loved me and all the cars and all the 112 and all that kind of stuff. And then when I got burned out and then I did something and got put away, it was like that form of consciousness was like, you're stupid. Why did you do all of that? Look at where we're at now. And then I'm like, talking back to this consciousness, like, what do you mean? Like, you was having fun, and then I caught myself. And I was like, who are you talking to? And that's when it clicked for me that when you're talking to yourself in English and it's talking to you back in English, you've created something with English. And because English is a mystical language, it is connected to the star, you have the being living inside of your consciousness. And you can oftentimes confuse this being to actually being you, especially when you turn off your feelings. Because if you don't have any feelings, the only thing then to communicate with is language. And this, now you're in, you're in its hands, right? Because it's a master of these linguistic things. But that's why I'm saying people can talk all they want, but man, you got to get in. And you know what I mean? That's where the transition's happening. And so for me just continuing to go in, not just delivering the message. That's why things get a little crazy for me, because I got other dynamics. Like, not only we're inventing stuff, we're helping children in inner cities. You know, we're bringing STEM and getting them, make sure they're up to speed. You know, we're building other platforms. We're making sure that we're ahead in the future. You know, we're tapping into the neural networks to see what is the depth of what kind of knowledge is already available when you actually tie thousands of minds together and get them to collaborate and see it. You see what I mean? Like, if people understand, like, I own text-to-image.ai on all levels, and text-to-image just became the biggest thing. Do you see how I own all those domains? Do you see how far we are ahead? So, see, the thing is that we keep thinking that this lethargic slug moving through the reality that says it's in control is actually more advanced than we are. And that's not what's happening. It just keeps trying to dumb us down and keep it inside of its narrative. Now, the narrative is very important. Nar is very important. The narrative of things is basically, who's the narrator? Okay. This is why I'm saying the narrative is so important in controlling your future, because who is the narrator? What role does a narrator play inside of a movie? It's that voice that's talking that seems to be trying to explain what's going on in the movie, right? So what if I told you that eidolon that was created through the language that you've been genuflecting with yourself with is most of the time in a negative level, the one that's telling you the bad things is actually created from the very linguistic system in itself, and actually playing that role of the narrator until you be like, look, man, I got this, man. This is my story now. This is why when you're dealing with a narrator, it's always about them, they. right? Which, again, there's times to talk about them and they, but they always get that name because nobody can really completely identify them because they can be in anyone. Right. And that's what the Agent Smith is in the Matrix, is like it can hop into someone. You can see it in your girlfriend. You can see it in different things. At the moment that a person relinquishes control and assumes the program, they can actually be tapped into by the corresponding wavelength, which generally be within that wavelength of conflict and confusion and the myriad of ways that it can actually manifest in your life, which we call minion behavior. This means that there are so many disincarnates. A disincarnate doesn't have a body and works for other entities. This is what the real troll word comes from. And these entities, their job, because they work in a hierarchy. It's like a military. So a standard warlock will have like 500 of them, maybe even 1,000 of them underneath him to help him carry out his deeds. Meanwhile, everybody gets their ass kicked when they come in and report, and they haven't reported disruption. So this is the hidden world of what they say, that the inverted. So what was discovered is that the other issue with this world, and this is why they show the sun and the moon. The other issue with this world is, in order to make this afterlife manifest, there needs to be certain type of mechanics, and those mechanics get real spooky. Like the nightshade side of things, which has to exist in order for there to continuously be a reflection off the light. Because see, the ocean in itself is a big mirror, and it's reflecting all the lights. You see what I mean? So not only is it the light in the sky that's reflecting off the thing, this thing is just a big ass black mirror basically. Yeah. And that's why the mirror magic, every single thing in modern magic is all about a mirror. Because it lets you know that at a twinkling of an eye, there could be a juxtaposition between the character that you think you are versus the character in the mirror. And this is why they always show the character with one eye. Okay. And that's a one-eye character actually just means like the character on the other side of the mirror, which is actually what your question was about, right? It's like, okay, so what about this other character? That other character exists when you don't have balance. And I guess I'll finalize that question since we kind of close up the container.
Seven, man. This is what I want to know. I want to know, what the hell did you do during that break? Because you came back and you on fire, brother.
I told you, it's like running track. It's running track. It's like serious. Like I was already primed and everything. I took my breaths and everything, and then we came over whatever the top of the hour was, bro. And you wasn't there, and then I started kind of making up excuses and everything. And I figured, like, man, I hit an alarm too. Maybe he was just trying to get some sleep before this or whatever. But so it's okay. So even what I'm doing, you know, I do make it look easy because I've been doing it for a long time, but it's an energetic thing. It requires me to actually go into a wavelength that I'm not, how can I explain it? It's almost like I'm not touching myself. I'm not actually like interrupting my mind and my consciousness if this thing goes well. If it doesn't go well, I'm pretty much checking every stanza of what I'm saying to authenticate it and make sure that it's accurate to the previous thing that I mentioned. So in that way, it could also be very robotic, but it's just basically making sure that the truth in itself stays in alignment with what everything we've said thus far. So it's like a self-updating system. Like, okay, if we're coming out of alignment here, because when you're in a paradox, there's a Biggie Smalls here. So I got to even be able to explain that, but in a way where, like I was saying, hey, it's more like we're all working together versus when we're doing different poles and we're not working together, to understand how positive and negative can work together. Because other than that, most people can't conceive in their mind how two opposing poles in the same field could actually move together. You see what I mean? Without one of them becoming positive or one of them becoming negative. And so to me, that's also what's up with the reality. It's like, I'm not trying to become a woman. So meaning that the whole thing with the whole conscious community and things like they be trying to do to men and try to put them into this thing like you haven't tapped into your divine feminine and blah, blah, blah. You need to become more sensitive and blah, blah, blah. It's not exactly like that. The most important thing is for you to actually truly be who you are. And if you're trying to force somebody to be something that they aren't, or you're trying to basically change a person's path, this is how a person gets off their path. So for me, it's more important to describe such things that I'm explaining now, rather than insist that everybody needs to do them. And then in my personal life, if a person is looking in and you're a stickler for detail and you see what I'm up to, you see what I write, and you see how I do it, you may see that mark of intelligence. If you made that mark of that, I can afford to put this person in my cabinet of curiosities of intelligence, meaning that I can vet them and say I can at least listen to some of the stuff that they're actually saying because it will be valuable to me, right? So that's what I constantly make sure that I'm doing in this position, because when I got into this position, it wasn't something that I was wanting to do personally, like I'm going to go and be a teacher. It was something that I was told that I have to do. And I thought that it was going to end a long time ago, because I thought I was done talking a long time ago. And now I will say that regardless of whatever happens with me, the Matrix, the Resistance, the whole nine, as long as there's some wax still and we got some recordings, everything that I already need to say is generally encased in every single one of my videos. Like I always make a summary of the entire cosmos by the time I'm done with any video that you listen to, right? So for me, it is like I'm repeating myself, but in a different way. And I'm agreeing to stay in whatever grade this is until I get that next upgrade. Like, yo, okay, now it's time for you to move to the next stage. And while I'm here, I try to learn as much as possible. And I learn a lot. Every time that I think about, man, you was going to leave, and think about it, you wouldn't have had even to learn that, and you would have needed that experience. I can see life as being a great teacher of experiences, right? But you got to throw yourself into it, and you got to challenge it. And so what I do is I challenge gods. That's the first thing I go at. Like I go at what I think I believe in. And so I realized the other day, I thought about this. I said, man, if I don't even believe in God, how can I believe in people? And I sat on that one for a while. And then that all too familiar, very powerful voice, but so quiet, came in and said, because you believe in yourself. Like, we got to understand that the belief that you have in your brothers and sisters is directly tied into the belief that you have of you. So if you start writing them off, you're literally writing yourself off. This is really like that. It's like it is very counterproductive for the growth of your DNA to deny it and to actually be disgusted by it and not want it. And I believe that we also have to realize, even as a people, melanin people, when we're making others feel that way, right? Especially people that we even could say is our friends, right? Because I got friends that are all from different parts of the spectrum. But even in some cases, like black folks will make white folks feel like that, basically that they shouldn't even be here, that they shouldn't even be alive, that they shouldn't be created, that they're not even real, that they're ghosts and phantoms. And you got to just think about just that from a whole nother dynamic about the kind of person that you are. And if that clicks, if that ever clicks, it'll also click to you about the Bible and God killing up everybody in the Bible, how anybody that does anything like that, they should never get a pass. You should never be able to kill babies and get a pass. I don't care who you are. Like on the last days of whatever, we'll meet in the sky then, and we'll go at it in, and that'll be the whole thing, because there are principles to life. And that's why I say love. You know, it's love. It's the Taurus. There's a principle to love, and it's pro-life. Why wouldn't it be? Right? If it wasn't, none of this would be here. If it didn't reach out to give the gift, something from nothing, the impossible, we still don't know where the first thing came from. It's impossible to figure it out. So that kind of force, if it didn't reach out an initial gesture, you try and tell me that ain't the most powerful thing is to give? That's why I say, hey, better to give than receive, my brother. Because if you can give, that means you're in the control point. And that's when I realized that this sovereignty thing was a big deal, because there's only a few of the gods that are sovereigns. And that was the whole concept of the Wujra Quran and the sailors, that they were all sovereigns. Sovereign was an actual term that you would receive when you reach a certain stage of actually being self-substantiated. This is what nirvana was really about. It basically means that you're not dependent on any of the elementals. So fire, water, earth, wind, all the air and all that oxygen, all that stuff, you don't need that to exist, right? And that's like, these are benchmarkers for things when you start calling yourself a creator. You see what I mean? And so what I would assume then is now we have this opportunity, as I mentioned before, to bring this stuff into alignment for maybe even ourselves individually sometimes, like more so than in 2023. See, in 2023 now, it's funny because it's 2223 right here on this side. So I guess that's the synchronicity, and it's the third. So in 2023, which is 322, right? In this time, this would be the time that there is somewhat of a fork of the road between us and they. Because see, the narrative is going to get into something so weird that it's going to fuse your brain. And let me explain to you how you know that this is already happening. It's not like just the Mandela effect, but it's the other effect. I'm not sure if you've seen this before, but it's the effect of where somebody will be saying something in like a video, and there will be two words on the screen. And based on the word that you read, you'll hear them say that. Okay? So I'm going to explain this one time, and maybe somebody share a video of this, but I found two videos like this. And they just show you how, like, it's like a subliminal thing. They had one, it was about the Barbie and Ken. And it was like, did he say Barbie or did he say, in this case, fuck? And so they'll put the two words on the screen, Barbie and that word. And then every time this part plays back, if you read one word, it sounds like that in your mind. And if you read the other, it sounds like that in your mind. And these words are nowhere near alike linguistically.
Right, right.
What is that? It's a back door. It proves that there's now a back door into the consciousness. I call this the yeah, no. Yeah, no is the new phenomenon, because we never said that when we were younger. It was either yes or no. There was a maybe. No. But the yeah, no is like when you could be talking and then you'll be like, you'll feel your brain. Well, you'll just say it. Most people just say it, yeah, no. But see, in true logic, these words don't go together. They're actually opposite. So what's actually happening in the brain is the brain is doing the opposite of singularity. It's fusing down. It's basically what would happen if you took two positive wires and you just held them together and right? So what I'm just giving you some awareness here that this is what you need to be aware of this phenomenon, because in 2023, this is how people start basically being tied into the narrative of the scarcity and the CDBCs and all this kind of stuff, rather than completely seeing the huge opportunity that is readily available within generative everything. So whether it's generative technology, whether it's generative holistics, the generative component of life is at its highest level. We have tapped into the regenerative components on all levels. So, but you got to focus, is you got to retrain yourself, right? It's a more rapid training, but you need to retrain yourself into generative things. But I'm mentioning this because the generative field is so abundant. Anybody starting in generative technology, if you may, at this stage, is guaranteed pretty much within 2 years to already had leapfrogged the situation in the matrix where they would be coming in to basically try to determine at every point, as I discussed with you when we were talking before, about every point about how you're making your money and who you're paying with, and what is that name, and is that name a BOGO, as we used to call it? Is it a house, or is it a profile, or is it really you? And you know, and is every single thing accounted for? And I just call this AI IRS because neural networks are extremely powerful, but they in themselves are at the behest of their welders right now. And these systems that are coming out, when they're feeding all the medical data, they're feeding all this data, and they're flattening this data. Don't think that this thing is like Google and just like a search engine. It's something entirely different. In fact, we are now at the brink. I think we're about 2 months away from GTP4. And once this is generative tech, this is generative AI, general intelligence, meaning that it will be at the level of thinking like a general human. You got folks over here still like, they're like, that, no, brother, that ain't gonna happen. That ain't. And it's like, that's all the illusion that you're in. That's exactly what they've been doing. They've been messing with people's mind so that they got this weird way of seeing the reality, and it's blurry. It's not even the real lens of how the reality is actually designed and put together. And so thus there's like this feeling that if you're consistently making bad judgments and not in alignment with yourself and empowering yourself and those that are around you, that nothing's going to happen. And that's not how this works. You have a certain amount of an allotment of time. And how you know that you received the grace, if you may, or the gift, is because you would be getting knowledge and wisdom that is like people were trekking the desert for thousands of years to hear any of this that we're talking about right now. Even if you could read or if you could speak, you would have to have somebody that actually knew this stuff and was able to tell it to you, let alone put it into application.
Yeah. That's
right. So now we have it where we can put it into application. Like if you wanted to see the other world, it's literally one trip away, but it's not as necessarily about doing that, right? Like now it's like we spent so long thinking there wasn't a spiritual world. You know, even though, like I said, you take DMT, you'll still see right away there's a spiritual world. It doesn't mean that you know what to do there. It doesn't mean you could take all the ayahuasca you want, and it doesn't mean that you know now what to do on the spiritual plane, but you know the spiritual plane exists. So imagine people who would spend 40, 50 years and never even, they just got this Jehovah thing they've been worshiping, and they never even seen the real spiritual plane before, right? So in conclusion, I want to also say that the deep level of knowledge here is that everything is really about your foundation. You have to have the courage to go back in if you need to rework your foundation and get on something solid. And the reason is because obviously when you even grow up in dogmas or you have things happen to you when you're younger, you base everything that you're experiencing on the world from those dogmas. So everything goes into that, like I said, angel or devil category when you have a heavy Christian religion programming sitting under the layer of your metaphysics. You see what I mean? And then so sometimes you got to go back and watch your consciousness and watch your mind and see how much of that residue is still left that is allowing you to go on with certain absurdities that is short-circuiting your very energy. In order to have access to the complete cosmos, you must have a pass. The way that you get a pass through the cosmos is that you actually will help all of the children. You don't care what color they are, any of that, that you will help the children as if they're your own. Because see, what a bad judge does is we got bad judges in the world. They judge the children and like they're not theirs. Like they'll give a young cat 20 years, but he'll never give his son 20 years. So he's not treating that child like it's his child. Because he'd be like trying to rehabilitate his son and all that kind of stuff. So see, our hard north is always to let us know that we're basically upholding the children for